So I think a nice way to practice, if you have an hour to practice, and I'll show you how to modify this in case you don't have an hour, would be to set a timer for 5 minutes. I just do it on my iPhone. You could do it on whatever kind of timer you have, and play in one key for 5 minutes. And then when the timer goes off, you switch to a new key. And if you do this for an hour, you will have played through 12 keys, which, for all intents and purposes, is all the keys. I saw a Victor Wooten video where he says there's actually 15 major keys and 15 minor keys, but I'll leave that for another discussion. I agree with him in principle, but for our purposes with this exercise, 12 keys is plenty. And of course, if you do something for 5 minutes and there's 12 of them, then that's an hour. 5 times 12 is 60. So it's a good way to spend your time. So what I did this morning, and I do things like this, regularly with my practice, is I set the timer for 5 minutes, and then I play in one key, and then I take it, whatever I'm doing, around the circle of fourths. You could use circle of fifths or some other pattern if you want. I'm going to speed through this by making my timer be 1 minute instead of 5, just for purposes of demonstration. Can everybody hear the metronome okay? Oh, John says there's a 33-minute long 251 backing track that cycles through every key on YouTube that I've used before. That's great. That's super great. Another thing that you can do if you have iReal Pro, there's a setting in iReal Pro. Here, let me stop the metronome while I'm talking here. There's a setting in iReal Pro that will, I think it's called practice mode, and you can have it each time you get to the end of a tune and go back to the top. You can either have it speed up or you can have it change keys. So what I do is I have it change keys, modulating by 5 half steps, which is a perfect fourth. So you tell the iReal Pro, like last night I was working on the song But Beautiful. It's a nice ballad by Jimmy Van Heusen. And I played through it 12 times, so once through in all 12 keys. I just basically played the melody and used iReal Pro as a backing track, and I improvised a little bit, but mostly I was concerned with is really cementing the melody in my mind and in my hands. So that's something you can do that in iReal Pro. Ben, I'm glad you can hear the metronome. That's good. Thanks for answering. Also, Ben says, I've been trying to practice things in all 5 caged positions, but haven't really done all 12 keys. Is it more of an ear thing or a hand thing? That is a good question. Let me answer that before I get into the metronome thing that I wanted to show you, because that's a really good question. Ben is asking, is the purpose of doing something in all 12 keys, is it an ear thing or is it a hand thing? I think it's less of a hand thing, because if you're practicing stuff in all 5 caged boxes and you do it in, half, the familiar keys, keys that we're likely to see, you'd probably be using half of what I would get to in all 12 keys. But you're working on hand stuff. If you're working in caged and you learn this lick in, let's say we're still in D minor, so there's stuff from this box, which is the C box, and then there's this box, and there's this box. And so to me, that's the hand stuff. I think working on caged things is more hand stuff, where you start to get the feel of what a melody will be like in different places. I maybe didn't do that the best way. I just played freely in each position. But let's say you want to have a lick. So that's in D minor, D, E, F, A, B, D. So that's from, I would say, C shape. Now I'm going to do it in A shape. Now I'm going to do it in G shape. And then E shape. Oh, I've run out of neck. Something like that. Anyway, that to me is hand stuff. But playing in all 12 keys is good ear stuff. It's also good all over the fretboard stuff. What it winds up doing is really eliminating. People often tell me they have blind spots on the fretboard where they can get around over here, but they're not sure about the notes over there. And if you spend an hour every day playing through all 12 keys, I think you will have a much more detailed map of the fretboard. You won't have blind spots. That's the main reason that I do it. And I think it's also just a good, kind of brain puzzle to work out, what are the chords of a blues in, F sharp minor? What are the chords of a blues in E flat minor? You want to know that stuff. The more you can do that freely, the more I think you'll recognize when you see stuff in a tune that on paper looks funny, like, oh, why did it go from that chord to that chord? So sometimes chord progressions are very strange and don't move in predictable ways. But just as often, what you're seeing is something that you already know and are familiar with, but it just looks funny because you're not used to seeing it in E flat minor or F sharp minor, or maybe even the person who wrote the chart out did a not so great job of kind of combining sharp chords and flat chords. And so the thing that's maybe simple in music might look complicated just because of the way it's written out. So the more you can be comfortable in all the different keys, I think the more music will reveal itself to you. And also, there are instances when you're on a gig or at a rehearsal and you have to change the key for whatever reason, and you don't want to be figuring out how to do that on the job while everyone else is waiting for you. You want to be able to do that. So, okay.